and how we intend to escape this situation and ensure that we've got the uninterrupted supply. Maybe just to say the following, we had an occasion to share with you the winter outlook. So this was on Monday, I think the 5th of May, about a week ago. And the winter outlook really was is an effort rather to share with the rest of the country how we project and anticipate the performance of the grid, and also to the extent that is necessary for commerce and households to ready themselves in relation to the outlook that we have shared with the country. I come before you just to first to say the following, that all of the things we have shared with the rest of the country regarding the winter outlook, they remain valid. And what are some of those key points we raised in the winter outlook? In the winter outlook, we make the point that we are entering this winter of 2025 on a much more better footing than we did the winter of 2024. And what are those key features from a generation point of view? The first one was that we are entering this confidently in that Quebec unit was synchronized to the grid on the 30th of December 2024. So remember, this was after some extensive outage. And then Quebec unit number 1, which is currently on outage as part of our compliance requirements in keeping with the long-term operation, the extension that we got from the operator to grant us an additional 20 years of operation. And Quebec unit number 1 is that although it's out, but we are projecting that it's going to come back in July of 2025, when we'll be at the peak of the winter period. So as the point is that during this winter, we're going to have the benefit of all of the Quebec units, at least by July of 2025. And then the third major difference between the winter of 2025 and the winter of 2024 is that we have successfully synchronized Kusile unit number 6 to the grid on the 26th of March. So that's an additional capacity that we have on the grid, approximately 800 megawatts, and we didn't have the benefit of this 800 megawatts when we entered the winter of 2020. Kusile 1, 2, 3 available to us, but remember that we needed to keep our commitment to the Minister of Fisheries Environment, Forestry, Fisheries Environment. Remember that we're given a temporary reprieve. A dispensation was created for us to be able to use these 3 units, and we had a legal obligation now to ensure that we restore these units to the permanent stack. We had a chimney, we had erected a permanent stack. So the winter of 2024, we had all these units available. But now, as I speak to you, only have this, only 2 of these units, but we are confident that we will get back Kusile unit number 1. So essentially, the situation in relation to the 3 units of Kusile of winter of last year and winter of this year will be the same. Only that for this year now, we have complied fully with the environmental requirements, so we don't need that dispensation as it was given to us by the Minister of DFFE. And the other major difference in relation to how we're entering the winter of 2025 compared to the winter of 2024 is that now we've got, we'll have the benefit of Medupi unit number 4. You remember it was unforced long-term outage. as a result of a catastrophic event that happened about 4 or 5 years ago. We didn't have the benefit of this 800 megawatts to the grid. And now when we get into this winter, we are going to get the benefit of this unit number 4, essentially an additional 800 megawatts. So if you come to think of it from a structural point of view, what is the generation base of 2025 versus 2024? So essentially, we've got approximately 2,500 megawatts of additional capacity. And that's why when we shared with the country a week ago, we're very bullish, optimistic about the prospects of a load shedding free winter, and or at worst a stage 2 load shedding if certain things were to happen. If a certain risk were to materialize, then we did make the point that we will then at most from our own projection have to initiate stage 2 of load shedding. So having said all of this, and I make the point, I reiterate that all of the above still remain. So that which we said a week ago and what I'm saying today still obtains. So there's no deviation from what we have shared with the country. So the next logical question to answer now is, why are we having load shedding? If indeed we are bullish about this prospect, if indeed the base of generation capacity has been improved by an additional 2,500 megawatts, so why did we find it appropriate to introduce stage 2 load shedding starting last night? Of course, during the peaks computed between 4 in the afternoon to 10 in the evening, and then the communication makes the point again today, and of course tomorrow we'll revise the performance and we'll share with you. So why is it that we have landed here? We have landed here because if you look at some of the things that the points we have made was that we're tapering down planned maintenance. Planned maintenance at an all-time high, because as I've made the point previously, even during the height of load shedding, was that we are going to experience short-term pain for long-term gain. We needed to deploy the resources that we received from the Minister of Finance in total over a 3-year cycle, 252 billion rands. A significant proportion of that we have invested in the replenishing and the refurbishing of our generation units so that we can have the benefit of uninterrupted power supply. And the winter outlooks also made the point when we presented last week was that we are going to bring down planned maintenance from the highs of about 7,500, even touching 8,000 megawatts of planned maintenance. We'll bring it down. And when we enter this almost the third week of May, we're going to bring it down to below 5,000. So that's what part of the assumptions. So the reason why we are here today is primarily because that promise of making sure that that planned maintenance comes down to below 5,000, we have not been able to fulfill it. So essentially, we have experienced what in technical terms we call outage sleeps. So outage sleeps really simply means that there's a promise. Just imagine you take your car to a dealership for a service, and they tell you that bring it in the morning, and then you'll have it available in the afternoon at 5. And then at 5 you go, they tell you, sorry, we are not ready, please come tomorrow. You go tomorrow, says, please, we are still not ready, please come the other day. Of course, we have made the necessary arrangements when they told you that they need it for the day, and then you can come fetch it close of business. You can do interim arrangements, how you drop kids at home, how you fetch them, rather at school, how you fetch them from school. You could hire a car for the day. Those who are privileged, you can Uber. Those who are privileged, I'm using that as an illustration. Of course, in this instance, we have failed to meet that promise. So that car that we said will be delivered by end of business has not been delivered by end of business. So it means that in this illustration of a car, then you must make other means which were not necessarily in your plans. Of course, in this instance, those outage sleeps, they amount to about 3,100 megawatts. So we had said that when we enter this winter period, would have brought down that plant maintenance, and in this instance by 3,100 megawatts, and those units have not come back. Those units have not come back as a result of a multiplicity of reasons. Some of them had to do with third-party players, the contractors, the OEMs that have not delivered. But that's not for the public. I think that's for us to manage. So this represents, I think, a failure on our part to ensure that there's proper management of the OEMs, and then we have that has resulted in outage slips. And once we have those outage slips, there's very little headroom for you to accommodate any losses in relation to generation capacity. Of course, Mr. Marokane and Becky will share with you some of the units that we have lost, but that's not the main reason. Even if we had lost that capacity, if these units that were on planned maintenance had come back on time, would have been able to absorb these units that are failing. I always make the point, it's in the nature of these units. These are moving engineering parts. They are likely going to fail. So you must create conditions to absorb such a failure, anticipate the possibility of that happening. So in this instance, even with these units that have failed, having failed, if we had delivered on the outage slips, we should not be experiencing a load shedding. So I want to just say to the rest of the country, once more, our most profuse and sincere apologies. So, I mean, I'm the first one to accept that in this instance. Really, it's not about the engineering performance of the units. It has to do with how we're able to manage this situation. And of course, we are having very difficult, hard, and candid conversations with the executive team to ensure that we are not experiencing these lapses. Of course, in the nature of the business that we are in, when we experience these lapses, they are catastrophic. They are catastrophic in that you are going to have periods in the day where we don't have electricity. That has got major implications on business, and it's a major disruption to the quality of life of ordinary people, citizens, and for that we want to apologize sincerely. But what is important is what is it that we'll do to ensure that we obviate this situation, so that in the future I don't stand before the country and say that there's outage slips. We do apologize. I think what is important, having apologized, is to go further and explain what are some of the interventions that will be made. Of course, as I've made the point, the team, the executive management team, will be engaging first with the general managers at the various power stations. I think there has to be an appreciation that we have entered a new domain, and that domain requires that although we have registered significant progress, but I think we're getting to a point where there has to be consequence management. If there's a promise to bring a unit by this date, and remember, how we arrive at a determination on when the unit will come back is a function of intense planning. So first you have to do projection on what is it that needs to be fixed when you take the unit out. And having made that determination, you also have to answer the question, will the spare parts be available? And they should be available in the workshop. The third issue you need to answer, will I have the right skills to be able to fix the unit when it comes out for maintenance, and or do I have to mobilize additional capacity from outside? So that's a planning function. And of course, in this instance, we have not carried ourselves very well, and that's why you see these outage slips. And then I've made the point earlier on that some of these outage slips requires that we engage the original equipment manufacturers. They are the ones that are contracted to do this exercise. And we're beginning to see that on a number of occasions, we were experiencing delays in returning the units, having done the necessary planning. So this is a planning issue, this is a management issue, and on this score, we have not covered ourselves in glory. I mean, just to give you an appreciation of these numbers, when we experienced the most intense levels of load shedding in 2023, the outage slips were averaging anything between 2,700 to 3,500 megawatts. And when we experienced that a good run of no load shedding, the team had done very well. We have brought that below 1,000 megawatts of outage sleep. So you can see now that essentially over the past 3 weeks, a month or so, we have dropped back to the levels, dropped down to those levels of 2023, where we had seen the most intense levels of load shedding. And that's the point I was making earlier on, that these are a very candid, robust conversation and comfortable conversation with the team to ensure that we are able to keep it focus on the bouncing ball, ensure that we get the units back on track. They must generate the megawatts at the time that we have made the promise, because the resources were made available. So we're not sitting with a money problem. We are not sitting with a skills capacity issue. We are sitting with the ability for us to do proper planning and ensure that the units are able to come back. So we are working at that. And like I said, so the one slip from the projection of the winter outlook is that we have not kept our promise on the outage slips. And we make the point in that winter outlook that if the aggregate unplanned capacity loss factor, the amount of megawatts that are out as a result of delays returning back, as a result of units failing on their own, if they exceed 13,000 megawatts, then there will be a need for us to initiate load shedding. And we did say that we think that we should not even exceed 15,000 megawatts. Again now, we have breached that red line. As a result of these outage slips, were the other side of 13,000 megawatts of UCLF, and that's why we had to initiate the load shedding. I want to conclude by making the point, before I invite Mr. Marokane just to share with you the level of the detail of what are some of those units and how are we returning them, and also going into the future at the management level, how we are going to ensure that they were able to bring down the levels of outage slips. I mean, frankly speaking, highly unlikely that you are going to eliminate them completely, but we need to bring them under tolerance levels so that we don't breach our promise of remaining below 13,000 megawatts of unplanned capacity loss factor, so that there is no load shedding. But the point I'm making, I think it's important that there's a greater appreciation. We have gone above that 13,000 megawatts, and that's why we had to initiate that load shedding. It's something that is receiving attention. As I was saying, we have moved beyond what I refer to as structural load shedding. Structural load shedding, I'm referring to the fundamentals that underpin our generation capacity have been resolved. That's the point I'm making. So the issues around planning, the issues around how we are able to, going into the future, ensure that our maintenance levels are such that they are much more aligned with the demand profile. Of course, we had to do what we did in the past 24 months because we had no option but to go very aggressive on maintenance. But what we have succeeded, and thanks to the leadership of Mr. Marokane and Mr. Ngumalo and the rest of the guardians at ESCOM, they've been able to ensure that we are able to build some degree of headspace, and now we are going to taper down and ensure that our planned maintenance is aligned with the demand profile, and you don't get to a situation where you are overexposed. Because these units, these 3,100 megawatts, the great majority of them are the ones that were returning from planned maintenance, and once we have brought down planned maintenance, essentially we have eliminated that risk. But we are able to do so because of the progress that the team has registered. But of course, when we experience in load shedding, I think it swells the good story. I think it just diminishes the confidence that the public have in our efforts to resolve the load shedding problem. But I really want to say to the country, now we are not experiencing structural load shedding. I think the fundamentals are in place, and we will continue to improve other areas. Again, this stage 2 load shedding in the peak period is another lesson that the team will draw from and ensure that we continue to improve. I think it's going to be something, the improvement are going to be gradual, are going to be incremental. Of course, in our space, the scope for catastrophic failure is limited because everyone can see when the lights are not on. For me, that represents a catastrophic failure because it undermines the economy to perform, but also it disrupts people's lives. So let me invite Mr. Marokane just to take us through on that level of detail together with Becky.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to the viewers at home. Just to give you some color, and maybe just to start off and confirm what the Minister said, our forecast in terms of our winter plan, as we explained last week, remains valid. In that plan, we actually indicated that the base case for assumption has moved down to unplanned losses of 13,000. And we're able to do so based on the performance experienced from the fleet in the last financial year, which performance led us to have a very long period of no load shedding, but which performance also came on the back of intense work done by the teams. We did indicate there that in a situation where this excursion in as far as breakdowns are concerned, and that excursion happens to the extent of 15,000 or so megawatts, that we are likely to experience stage 2 load shedding. And this is really what happened this week. Unfortunately, as we indicated in our conversations last week as well, this is as a result mainly of slippages from outage execution. And slippages, as Minister explained, pertain to our inability to return these units on the dates that they are planned to come back. To give you a sense, between the 9th of May and the 12th of May, the underlying and planned losses hovered between 9,500, 10.3 thousand and 11.4 thousand, or 11,400 megawatts. That's really where we want to be running our fleet even better. However, in that same period, we had the escalation of unplanned capacity loss as a result of slippages moving between 1.5 to 3,000 megawatts. That's the danger that we really have to be managing from our execution of our maintenance program. And as the Minister said, this is an aspect that, from our review of the first cases of load shedding earlier this year, is receiving attention. It's receiving attention because it has to do with the clinical finish when it comes to execution of the work, from scope definitions, readiness from skills availability, both on our sites and the sites of our contractors, availability of spare parts, and the discipline of following through within the schedules that we require. We've started work already on the space, as we said, that we've learned some lessons from the first incidents of this year. And we had started a very different planning approach with our OEMs, where they're involved right at the beginning in a much more deeper way. And we have brought on closer to us some of the OEMs who are able to help us with specialist areas that have caused some of the pain points that we observe. So we are moving in that direction. The important aspect at this point in time in the calendar year is that our plant maintenance needs to be tapering down. We indicated that by the middle of May, the anticipation is to have plant maintenance below 5,000 megawatts and gradually towards 4,000. We are already below 5,000. We're not seeing the benefit of that because we've got the slippages that we have to deal with. It's primarily around some 6 units in Duva, in Grootvlei, Kriel, Medupi, and Tutuka, and the teams are hard at work bringing those units back into operation. In fact, some of them have started coming through from last night. Some will come through in the course of the day. Some will come through tomorrow. And that should really see us working out that unplanned capacity loss due to outage slips. As we get into a phase of lower maintenance levels, plant maintenance levels, the risk associated with outage slips reduces quite drastically. And so a critical period is really the transitioning from what was a high period of maintenance to getting back into normal operations. And it is this transience that has really cost us some of the pain. The situation that happened, of course, was as a result of these delays, but was exacerbated by some of two key safety-related incidents and outages at Letabo and Kusile yesterday. These are outages that we would have taken anyway in the course and in the name of ensuring that our safety practices are above reproach. The teams are looking at those two specific cases, that one unit at Kusile and one at Letabo, and we are hoping that we will get this sufficiently restored before the beginning of next week, having gone through the necessary planning stages. For now, we will continue with the load shedding as communicated yesterday. We'll do the 6-hour bouts between 4 and 10 p.m., the 6-hour slots to manage the evening peak at stage 2. Our teams will, of course, assess the situation every day at midday, and today at midday, the same exercise will be undertaken to assess where we are and how the evening looks like. And tomorrow we'll do the same and provide updates to yourselves appropriately. As indicated, the work with deepening planning capabilities and collaboration with the OEMs is underway. We have identified some of the OEMs that we have had MOUs with before, that have really brought some insights that are helpful in terms of accelerating the pace and shortening the time it takes to resolve some of our challenges related to material, but also to technical skills in our stations. And that work Becky has been doing. We have also started engaging with our counterparts in some of our local OEMs. We need to address the issue of skills across the spectrum. It's skills within ESCOM that we have started dealing with as part of the Generation Recovery Plan. We have to also address skills within our main contractors, particularly in the areas of welding, which impact schedules as we go through outage execution. We have found each other in terms of ways of working that will help us narrow the gaps. And I'm comfortable that as we refine insights coming from the experiences that we have, we'll have the ability to collectively work as Team SA to minimize the risk. I just want to pause here, perhaps, Minister, and allow that we take questions, and maybe we can deal with some of specific issues that come from the audience here. Suffice to say that our forecast, our plans remains valid. What's necessary is for us to really drive this aspect that has introduced risk that pertains to outage slippages. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Minister and to Mr. Marukana. Colleagues, you know the drill, and it has not changed. We will now take questions, and we will do so by starting with the hands in the room, and then we will proceed with questions that have been shared online. So by a show of hands, colleagues, do we have any questions in the room? There's Heidi. Any other questions? And then we'll take Katleho before we take the online questions then. Heidi, you can go ahead. Thanks.
It's Heidi Joggles from NCA. Please could you just repeat the units that are out and at which power stations? You said it too fast. Mr. Marukana, if you could just repeat that. And then also, can you just clarify, we staying in stage 2 until further notice? Thanks.
Good morning, Kgosientsho from the SABC. We find ourselves here, Minister. I remember at some point you had gone to these power stations to engage them about some of the issues that you picked up. Excuse me. It was about, I think at some point you spoken that most of these issues at these power stations are man-made. and they're not technical. We haven't gotten a report back to say that from that time when you engaged with them, what is it that you uncovered? What is it that you managed to maybe get a sense of what's happening at these power stations to avoid ourselves finding ourselves here again? I'll end it here.
Thank you, colleagues. We'll take online questions from Takalani.
Terence Creamer from Engineering News. The first question. Could Eskom disclose its use of the OCGTs as well as how much has been spent on diesel during the latest summer maintenance season compared with the previous summer maintenance period? The second question. Is the latest decision to implement load shedding over peaks motivated at all to be a desire to save on diesel costs? The third question. What is the Minister's response to the ongoing unhappiness with the latest draft of the IRP, and is any consideration being given to opening consultations beyond NEDLEC ahead of cabinet approval?
Thanks, Lebohang. Those questions are coming from? Terence Creamer. Okay. All
The
right.
question is coming from Terence Creamer from Engineering News.
All right. Thank you. We'll get responses. Can you repeat the second question?
Is the latest decision to implement load shedding over peaks motivated at all to be a desire to save on diesel costs?
Thanks, Lebohang. We'll be taking responses from... Yes, that's all for now, for this round. Lebohang, are there any other questions from other participants? So we've got questions from Heidi, Katleho, and Terence Creamer online.
Let me deal with the questions from Terence first and reiterate the fact that our diesel pickers are part of our fleet. They're designed to assist us to manage the peak when demand is higher than capacity available elsewhere. We use them, and we've said this before, that we'll use them strategically to help us provide electricity to South Africans. We will use them only when we need to use them. The fact that we are using them for 6 hours yesterday, today, and tomorrow as planned has got to do with the fact that our challenge is over that 6-hour period. It's got nothing to do with any cost-saving initiative. It's got everything to do with our need to meet the demand at that point in time. We'll use all our reserves appropriately and to the extent that they're needed and no more. That we are requiring them only for that 6-hour period should also be telling. It says that for the other parts of the period, we are able to meet demand with the rest of our capacity that's available. When it comes to the issue of the saving or the cost associated with diesel usage, we have over the last 15 months, over the course of the last 15 months, we have reported our diesel usage every week, Friday, 5 p.m. without fail. We have done so to provide the weekly consumption, and we've also provided the year-to-date consumption and comparing that with the comparative period for the previous time. So Terence has it, all journalists has it. We issue this media statement every 5 p.m. power outlets. We are transparent in those numbers because it's important that we remain around the track. It is possible that for the summer period, the usage may have been higher than the comparative period last year, but you should also remember that for this summer period, we are doing more maintenance than the previous period. We have also paid a lot of focus on what our overall consumption of diesel is in any financial year, because that's the number that we are also looking at. Staying within our budget and how we allocate the utilization of diesel within that period becomes a tactical thing that we have to deal with. The fact remains that when we look at the last periods, we have seen significant savings in diesel costs. What's happening now in the last 3 weeks and 4 weeks may come out as a higher consumption than the previous period, but it does not necessarily follow that you can extrapolate that information and say that's going to be the case for the rest of the year, and therefore the impact on the budget. We are monitoring that quite carefully as well. Heidi's questions. The units that were at the center of the 3 gigawatts or so at stations like Duva, Grootvlei, Kriel, Medupi, and Tutuka. It's not about where they are. The issue that's important is that we have to tackle this issue of outage slips. It could be those today, could be another tomorrow, and that's why the focus that we are taking under Becky's leadership is tackling the overall plan and how we set ourselves for execution of outages across the rest of our fleet. I've indicated that coming from the assessment of the first load shedding incidents of this year, we identified areas that pertain to people, processes, and systems. We are dealing with the issues of people in terms of accountability conversations and engagements. We are dealing with issues of people when it comes to supporting our managers better, given the dynamics that are evolving. Our managers are putting in a lot of hours. These are long hours of operations that we also have to rise up to in terms of our support structures to enable them to perform in these areas. At the same time, we have to hold each other accountable when resources and support is provided and the results are not coming. We've also looked at some of the process issues in as far as access to spares and some of the procurement issues we encountered in good faith whilst we are trying to resolve some of the challenges. And the plans that I spoke about that deals with closer collaboration with OEMs at specific stations, making them responsible for sourcing spare parts for us, but also making them an integral part of the planning and the skills acquisition for execution of the jobs is a result of the work that the minister reported on following the site visits that we made through it. So we are integrating these aspects into what we're doing, and we'll be very happy to continue to report on how we are faring in that space. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Maybe just two questions. The one to Katlego, the findings out of the many visits that you have made to the power stations. It's a multiplicity of issues that the workers were raised. Some of them are really internal, not for public consumption, but those matters have been brought to the attention of the management, and I'm confident that Mr. Ngumalo and the group chief executive Mr. Maraukane are attending to those. But the one that is opposite to this conversation today had to do with what they refer to as outage planning, the issues of procurement of spare parts to ensure that when you take the units out, there's outage readiness. The right people are available, they are scheduled properly, the issues of the shifts that the people that you need should be available, but also most importantly, that the spares are also available. And those are the issues that I placed before management. But I must say that as you would have seen, when I went to all the power stations, I was with the management, so they didn't make a new discovery when I was presenting this to them. And it's something that is receiving attention as the Group CE has just indicated. And just to Terrence's question on the IRP, the NEDLEC issue of consultation rather, it's a legislated process, so that's where you find communities, business, and also labor. There is a requirement in the country, just for the benefit of the rest of the colleagues here, that when you do policy formulation, there's a requirement that you have to go through this broader consultative process, which is really a product of our democratic process to ensure that there's a structured engagement with all the key role players, in addition to your normal public consultation process. So the integrated resource plan, of course, was given to NEDLEC sometime late last year, And of course, Netleg has got its own processes, so we have to respect those processes, and those conversations are ensuing at Netleg. They'll make their reports as part of the totality of the submissions that is made by everyone, and then we'll carry those to the extent that we think that they should be carried into the IRP. We'll carry them to the IRP. To the extent that we are of the opinion that they will not be enhance the IRP, we'll make that call, and then Cabinet will finally approve. But I think it's important that before we go to Cabinet, we are able to show that there has been that engagement from Netleg, and Netleg will also generate its report. But principally, policy making is the domain of the executive, but it benefits from the contribution of the rest of the country. And as and when Netleg completes that process, that's the last step that is left, and then we go to Cabinet, and then we'll make the IRP available to the rest of the country, and it's going to guide our work going into the future.
Thank you once again, Minister and Mr. Marukane. Colleagues, just the last round up. Do we have any follow-up questions? Any other questions? Lebohang, any questions online? And in the room, I see Katleho. Any other questions? So we'll take Katleho, and then Lebohang, you'll take us through the online questions.
Again from the SABC. Mine is on the money that was received from Treasury. I think it was at about 252 billion rand over 3 years. Are you able to give us a sense of how much of that has been used so far in terms of this process? You said you went on a ramped-up process of just rehabilitating and really maintaining some of these power stations. So how much of it has been spent so far? Where are we in that 3 years? And do you envision that when this 3 years is done, do you envision going back to Treasury for more, looking at the work that has already been done so far? And the OEMs as well. When you're looking at consequence management, are you looking at naming and shaming some of those that have seemingly worked to undermine this process that has been underway, Minister? Are you looking at just more or less blacklisting them even, so that they're not able to do business in a way that we don't find ourselves here? I know Transnet has had issues as well, where the OEMs are concerned. Is there a broader thinking around how then we address issues of OEMs so we don't find ourselves here again?
We have a question from Nanise Omaji from News 24. Is Eskom able to share which OEMs it is engaging with? Can clarity be provided on the skills gap? Is it both Eskom and OEMs?
Okay, colleagues, without any further questions, we'll now take responses, and we'll then conclude today's media briefing. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll ask my colleague Becky to give you a flavor of our expenditure when it comes to maintenance, but let me address the issue of the National Treasury Debt Relief Program in its totality. This is really intended to help Eskom, amongst others, or more importantly, reduce the level of debt from the 450 billion number that you all know of to a level that is acceptable and serviceable by the business going forward. So the aspects related to the reduction of the debt and aspects relating to funding ongoing operations within the business, and maintenance being one of those. Our maintenance programs previously suffered because capital was not available and trade-offs were made, which trade-offs translated to an unacceptable state of equipment within the fleet. And what the minister refers to by saying that the money is available is that now all our maintenance plans for the current year and maintenance plan and spare parts required for maintenance plans going forward, we are able to place orders on time and get ready ourselves to execute on that. So we have no excuse, but Becky will talk to that. The issue of OEMs, OEMs are an integral part, our OEMs are an integral part of our teams to deliver. So we have this conversation with the understanding that it's about improving the relationships and ability to deliver. This is not about a naming and shaming. We are at this point focusing on how can we improve the collaboration with them and also learn from the observations to date. The issue of skills is a country issue. The issue of skill shortage is a country issue. Ask any of the heavy engineering industries, they'll tell you that the skills are a challenge, and we're beginning to see skills migrate from one employer to another. We do see this even on our sites, where some of our staff move across and are hired by OEMs or are hired by other industries. What we need to solve is the totality of the skill pool for the country, and we start off by working around our own sites and understanding what we need and preparing to support the projects that we have with the right skill sets in that area. And we think we will be able to solve this because there's willingness on both sides for us to go through this.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning, colleagues. I think in terms of the maintenance, our maintenance is divided into, let me say, 3 categories. We've got routine maintenance, which is part of that happens daily, and then we've got the general overalls, which is mostly the capex part. That part is normally it's around 12 billion per annum. And then we've got on top of that what we call abnormal maintenance. That's when we are also doing projects, like we are putting in the emission projects in different sites. So like what we're doing as well at Quebec and most of our sites. That total capex is about 30 billion per annum for the past. So we are quite grateful that the board has allowed us to get those fundings on time. So now it's a matter of executing. And then obviously dealing with this issue of how we execute on time and then return the unit on time, because that's where the challenge is now, and it's something that we are working on. Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Well, thank you very much, colleagues. I think that brings us to the end of the briefing. I really want to say the following, just to the rest of the country, that we do experience these setbacks. I did make the point previously that we are likely going to encounter these setbacks. But what is important is to ensure that we stay the course, focus on the bouncing ball. If you look at the trend line, it's still positive, moving in the right direction. What is important is the speed with which we are able to come out of load shedding. And then we get to a period where we have a sustained period of uninterrupted supply, to a point where there will not be load shedding. And I'm the first one who will come before the country to announce to you that load shedding is before us. And when I make that announcement, I'll have the full confidence of, if you like, the engineering evidence, and will be able to surface it to the rest of the country. But I must say that the group CEO, Mr. Ngumalo, and the 40,000 plus men and women of ESCOM, as we refer to them, the guardians, they are doing everything possible to ensure that we keep the lights on. Of course, this is the 6th bout of load shedding since we have had that long period of uninterrupted supply. It can have the net effect of undermining public confidence in the message that we are conveying. It can have also the impact of essentially pulling down the men and women at ESCOM, not necessarily seeing the kind of efforts they are making, resulting in uninterrupted supply. I must say that they have got our full support. In instances where there are setbacks, there's a lot to be learned out of those setbacks. Like I said, this current episode, it talks to better planning with regards to outage and ensuring that, as the Group C makes the point, that there's that engagements with the OEM, because if you come to think of it, although they are OEMs, but they are part of our stable, in that we rely on them in many instances to help us to get the units back on track. I want to say to the rest of the country, we do understand your if you like, disappointment, and of course, exceptionally grief that is understood, your anger well understood, and we're feeling your pain. But I must say to you that we are going to get this right. I'm more than confident. Like I say all the time, we are within touching distance, and once we have resolved it, I'll be the first one to come before the country to say that we have resolved it. So to Mr. Marukana and the rest of the team, let's keep at it. There will be these setbacks, and I think there's a lot to be learned out of these setbacks. So what are these events that appears to take us back are the ones that are going to ensure that they build some degree of resilience, who are able to package these experiences and ensure that we don't repeat these missteps. And I'm confident that the team will do everything possible to ensure that we get out of this situation. I think what is positive now is that we have come to a stage where a stage 1, a stage 2 is not acceptable. And I've made the point before that load shedding, whatever the intensity, is not acceptable, especially for a country like ours. I don't think that is acceptable on any account, and that's why we want to make it a part of our history. We want to talk of it in past tense, of course, always remain in our vocabulary, understanding what not to do when confronted with a situation where you need to support the economy by ensuring that the sustainable supply of electricity will come much later in relation to a new generation capacity. So today was just to explain to you on the work that we are doing to ensure that we get out of this bout of load shedding. But I think what is significant is to illustrate to the country that we are doing everything possible to ensure that this new generation capacity will come out with ESCOM to share with you new generation capacity that's coming from cleaner forms of generation. Will come and share with you how we are going to sustain the performance of these power stations to also support the industry, especially the smelters, so that they reopen and they are also competitive. There's work that we have completed will be sitting before Cabinet in the next cycle of Cabinet. Once that is approved, then we'll share with you the rest of that report. At its heart is the resolution of the economic question in the country. So we are looking beyond load shedding, ensuring that we are able to support industries, and industries should be competitive and are able to create jobs and broaden the manufacturing and industrial base of the country. That happens if you have affordable, sustainable, quality electricity that is available all the time. That's what is going to power the South African economy. So we are resolving that the growth story that Minister Godongwana and the rest of Cabinet led by President Ramaphosa is grappling with, electricity and the efficiencies on the logistics side are a big part of that. We have resolved our question, or at least we are taking a proposal to Cabinet, and once it's resolved, you'll see how we want to ensure that the economy of the country recovers. But for now, the lights ought to be on, and that's why we thought it's important that, as it is customary with the department, we present ourselves during moments of difficulties to take responsibility, account, apologize most profusely, and say to you, these are the set of actions that we are taking, and ensure that these missteps are not repeated. So thank you very much for making time, colleagues. We are concluded.